Hey there, team, and welcome back to the Pillar Podcast, where we sit down with the leaders in their field of research and high performance, as well as the teams and the founders of the companies that exist within the field of endurance sports and fitness. At Pillar, we are on a mission to get athletes to their start line in the best condition. We enable that by developing clinical micronutrition supplements across sleep, recovery, inflammation, energy, and of course, immunity. On this week's episode, our head of research, Dr. Dan Plews, sits down with former Ironman world champion Chelsea Sodaro. Chelsea talks about her early background as an elite collegiate runner at Stanford. She shares her early experiences in running, including the pressure she felt as a young athlete and the challenges that she faced in finding the right training environment. Chelsea then goes on to discuss her journey into triathlon, from short course Olympic distance into eventually doing the longer forms of the format, and also into a future Ironman World Championship at Kona. A key takeaway from this part of the chat I found was finding the importance between balancing the right training partners and also coaching. Finally, Chelsea reflects on the realities of pregnancy and postpartum, post-recovery as an athlete, and some of the challenges that she faced after winning Kona. She emphasises the most important need is to really find the joy in the journey, which I think a lot of us can relate to. It's a fantastic chat, and I hope you guys enjoy it.
Chelsea Sodaro, welcome to the Pillar Podcast. And you are officially, at least my first guest on the Pillar Performance Podcast. So welcome. Obviously, you've just, you have not long left the not so sunny coast of New Zealand now, actually. Since you left, it's just done nothing but rain. But now you're back. Where are you now? I guess we can tell the audience about what you've been up to for the past, well, I guess since January, really. And where you're at now and what's going on.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. That's pretty cool. I'm your first guest. I didn't know that. I thought you'd be a little better prepared when having me on, but that's okay. I'm back.
We need to start with a big bang, you know. I need to get the audience going, you see. So
all right.
We start high. And then hopefully you're going to be the draw card for everyone else to listen. That's my plan. You see.
Fair enough. Well, we'll see what we can do. I'm in Reno, Nevada. I just got home from New Zealand, and I think I've timed this right because I got the best of summer in New Zealand, and as the weather was starting to turn there, I flew back to Reno, and now it's like 70 and sunny here. So I'm living large. Yeah, life is good.
When a winner, and that means that you get to get out on the aim I think for most people is to keep the shorts and t-shirt dream alive for the whole year and not have to wear not have to go into the longs when you're out on your bike, and hopefully
totally
might just achieve that.
I think I'll be pretty close. I've done winter here the past couple of years, and last winter we had like 3 or 4 months of snow. I was inside a ton. And I'm just not really down for that anymore, I decided. So I'm going to follow the summer.
No, who would be? But I guess, you had, it was a very successful time over here in the Southern Hemisphere. Started off in the race of Tauranga as a little bit of just a warm-up and an introduction to the season. But then double wins. I had a really good race in 70.3 Tasmania, where you won quite convincingly there, and then went on from there to then dominate pretty extensively at Ironman New Zealand in a course record time. I think was it the fifth fastest run in the entire race as well. I think including men, something like that.
Sounds right, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, do you want to talk us a little bit through those couple of races from your perspective as well?
Yeah, I think it was a really successful trip. I started my season much earlier than I usually do, and I ended last year with Kona, and that was, not really that result wasn't what we were hoping for, and I think we learned a lot from it, and we've grown a lot from that experience, but I really wanted to get back to some fun racing. I, got into this because I really love competing, and last year just felt really heavy. Every single race was high stakes, high pressure, and I wanted to kind of find my joy and rediscover my love for competing because I think I lost that last season a bit. Tauranga was, it's a local race. It's a fun environment. I didn't get the result that I wanted there, but I think we got some good fitness benchmarks and kind of realized that we were on the right track with things and knew what we needed to work on. And then Tasmania was an incredible race. I'd never been there before. And the just like it's, hilly, mountainous, and it was a gritty race. And I think that was a nice fitness booster and confidence booster. It was my first win since, the Kona win in 2022 and only my second win since having Sky. So it was fun to get back to that feeling. And I think, winning becomes a habit. It's something that you need to practice. And it was great to get that feather in my cap. And I guess that was in February that we raced there.
February, early Feb. And then onto New Zealand from there. I mean, just going in, like what Tauranga allowed though, it's always good. I always do think from a coaching perspective as well is that when things go really well, you don't really learn a lot. But I think even though like Tauranga, it wasn't a very meaningful race, which was good. It's always good to have not your best performances in the less meaningful races, right? Of course. And then we learned a lot from that. And then as a result, we got into the lab, we did some great testing, we got onto the velodrome, we perfected your bike position a bit more. And we made some massive changes. And I think that's what came into fruition in New Zealand, right? Where you obviously you did get an unjustified 5-minute penalty. I know I'm somewhat biased, but you would have had the fastest bike split by a good margin, which is something that's I think that's great progress in terms of what we were working on, at least in terms of the biking and getting that up point. And we had some, for those who don't know, we had some quite emotional times in my garage with some very high intensity interval training sessions. But they were worth it in the end because they did get I think they made a big difference from the lab testing. We kind of figured out that you needed a bit more the high end stuff. So we did get to work and it made a very big difference. So that's really awesome. And then and the rest is history. Of course, we did finish on a bit of a low last was it 2 weeks ago now? But I mean, I think what I find always funny is that the saying you're only as good as your last performance, and you go from riding a real high wave to suddenly being knocked off it. But I think we've just got to remember that everyone has bad races, everyone has bad days, and the trick is you've got to get back up and get back on with it, right? Which is what we're now doing. So yeah, awesome stuff.
I read this great quote from Coco Gauff today, who's a incredible, very famous American tennis player, and she said she would like to win every single match that she competes in, but the reality is that she has bad days at the office, and that's just how sport is. And I think for me, in Singapore, right, it was a bad day at the office. Unfortunately, my bad day at the office is broadcasted for the world to see and the triathlon community to see. But I do look back at, the performance at Tauranga, and at the time I was really upset and disappointed, and it turned into this great opportunity to, reinvent my bike position and some of the training that we were executing on the bike. And I think 2 or 3 years ago, I would have still 2 weeks after Singapore been moping around my house and just really down on myself. But I don't know. I think it was a bad day that we can learn from and grow from. And I know that there's another great performance around the corner.
Yeah, as I say, life goes on, and the sun will come up tomorrow. I think I said that to you shortly after the race. But I mean, and I think as a coach and as someone who works with professional athletes, I think it's really hard for people to understand the magnitude and what it is like to and how brave it is to put yourself. To go out there and put yourself out there to do things on the world stage and have that broadcasted, because it's really hard. And I find it quite disappointing with humanity sometimes, is that, that you get a lot of negative comments from people who have no idea of what it's actually like to put yourself out there. And the people who do put these negative comments out there have never had the position or the ability to put themselves out there because they probably never achieve very much. And I think that's, I think that's why it's important to keep your head up high and move forward. But no, I think we focus on the positives. And one of the things that I really wanted to talk to Chelsea Sodaro about today, which I think most people haven't really, I mean, you've been on a lot of podcasts and most people haven't really talked about it that much, is your background, specifically your background as a runner. So before triathlon, some of the things that you've achieved in running, some of the training that you used to do, some of the coaches you've had, some of your inspirational coaches, because I know you have had some real inspirational running coaches and who you still talk to a lot. And I think, often you aren't talked about within the runners of triathlon, which I think is absolutely crazy when you consider your running pedigree. So, where to begin? So I guess a good starting point was when did you start running? And I guess when did you realize that you had a bit of a knack to be a good runner? And just to give that bit of context, like Chelsea's one of the most beautiful runners there is out there. And having been someone who has trained with Chelsea a little bit, like when we were training last year before Kona, I was basically Chelsea's training partner. It's not a good feeling running next to Chelsea because you feel like a massive oath of an unfluid buffoon next to this kind of like fluid, smooth running person. It's quite, it's obviously a very natural talent, but yeah, let's get into the running side of things a little bit and talk us through, where it began and how you kind of made your way up to eventually, national US national 10K champion and going and trying to get into the Olympics.
Yeah, well, that's very kind. And luckily for you, you get to give it back to me on the bike. So I think we're pretty even. Yeah. I got into, so my dad was kind of a competitive recreational runner. And I guess he must have been in his like late 30s, early 40s when I started riding my bike with him for a lot of his training runs. And I just thought it was the coolest thing. I'm sure it was like because it was my dad and I thought he was cool and looked up to him. But I got to be kind of a part of his marathon training, and he's from Boston, Massachusetts. And so the Boston Marathon was a big deal in our house. He was always training for that. And there was like this lore around it. And so I think that kind of running got put on my radar very early in life as this like cool activity. And like running isn't that cool, if we're being honest. But to me, it was like a very neat.
I think ultra running isn't that cool.
We're gonna get a lot of haters.
But there seems to be, I do think that like running is interesting, isn't it? Because the level of coolness gets lower and lower as the distance goes up. Like you start with 100 meters and they're like really cool. And then you kind of get longer, 800 is still cool, 1500, you get to 10K, getting a bit less. And then marathon,
I like to say, I was like a miler to start out with. And I always wish that I could have been a sprinter because they get to like bling out, they can wear like proper jewelry and have like long nails and look really fantastic.
That was a motivational reason for many people, but there you go.
I know. But like, as you get to these like middle distance and distance events, like you can't glam it up as much. And in triathlon, it's a huge disaster for the look.
You can paint your nails.
But that's pretty much it though. And the sacrifices we make, right? But I like got into running myself. I think when I was in 7th grade, I joined the middle school cross country team and I had some really like immediate success there. And I was like very kind of competitive. But I actually quit the next season because I like already felt this sense of pressure and it wasn't that fun anymore. And so I was like, running is not for me. And I just like focused on my soccer and other activities.
So that's quite interesting though. So where did that pressure come from? Was that kind of an intrinsic pressure from yourself?
Yeah, I think it was an intrinsic pressure. I don't remember like my parents putting pressure on me or my coaches or anything, but I was like I think I was like winning sort of league races or at least like, at the pointy end. And then I had this like big breakthrough at the championship where I got second and I beat my nemesis. Her name was Julie Perry, and we'd gone to elementary school together and I really wanted to beat her in middle school. And I like missed a few times. And then finally in the last race of the season, I beat her and I threw up all over my jersey. And I was so proud. And I actually hung the jersey on my wall as this badge of honor. And my mom took it off and washed it. And I was beside myself. But I think I definitely showed a level of like toughness and competitiveness very early, but the next season came around and I was like, oh, now I have to be better than I was last year or as good as I was last year. And that's pretty good. And that doesn't feel that fun to me anymore. So I quit the team. My coach was all sad and disappointed. And I was like, I don't like this anymore. And that was it. I was going to be, a soccer player again. And for whatever reason, I decided the next year when I started high school to try the cross country team again. And I think I showed some good promise in the first couple of races. But the best part was that I was making friends with juniors and seniors in high school. And for a dorky little 13-year-old, that was really awesome.
Yeah, wow.
And the first thing that I kind of enjoyed was that team aspect and camaraderie, and the team was pretty good and they were always trying to qualify for the state meet. And pretty quickly I was on the varsity team and trying to win the sections and qualify for the state meet. And I think that when I felt part of something bigger than myself and really embraced by these other girls, that felt really, really neat. But then in the spring, I started beating them and it became something very different where I realized, oh, I'm actually really good at this. And they didn't think that was that cool.
Yeah. And how did that go down? Because you go from, I guess it's always a bit of a kick in the face when you got a youngster who you're looking up to them at that point and you're kind of enjoying having these elder almost mentors, and then suddenly you start beating them. Did that start to make it a bit less enjoyable because of that? Because I guess did they start treating you differently or?
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever talked about this before in this format, but
exclusive for the podcast. We like that.
Exclusive for the pod. I think maybe a month into the track season, there was an intervention, and the assistant coach gathered the top female runners and took us into the gym. It must have been 6 or 7 girls who were kind of my friends the previous fall, right? They're all, juniors and seniors in high school. And I'm this 13-year-old freshman, and they sit me down and one by one, they go through the group and they all tell me things that I'm doing in practice that is bothering them.
Oh, wow.
And assistant coaches kind of let this happen. And these 17 and 18-year-old girls are telling me we don't like it when you pass us in practice. We don't like it when you sit and kick on us at the end of intervals. And it was this really formative moment, right, in my life as a young person, where I thought I can either choose to fall into line and maybe keep these friendships, or I can really bet on myself and I can go for this and try to be as good as I can possibly be. And
it's an
at that point,
to such a young.
I think it was really led by the other girls, but the assistant coach kind of mediated it. And I don't think it was maybe initially kind of malicious, but there was definitely this dynamic where, I wasn't supposed to be performing how I was, and I wasn't falling in line with the pecking order.
Yeah, I mean, I think in New Zealand we call it I don't know if you've heard of it. It's tall poppy syndrome. Have you heard of?
Yeah,
heard of
I have.
I mean, it's very. I find it to be very much the case here in New Zealand as well. I mean, but it's obviously all around, right? Is that people don't like you doing things that you shouldn't be doing, that or even when you defy the odds and you do something that shouldn't be done, people don't often. You brought down a little bit, but that's crazy. That's
So I think that, I mean, I reflect on it now. I haven't talked about this in a long time, but I think it has really shaped me in some ways, right? Where I decided I'm going to choose to find out how good I can be. And I'm not really going to let anybody get in my way. And when I feel something isn't serving me or isn't right for me, I'm going to move on from that. And that's how it's played out really until now. And I feel that I've had to bet on myself a lot and make some really hard decisions where, it would be comfortable to stay in a certain environment, but I just like knew in my gut that it wasn't right and it wasn't going to get me to where I wanted to go. And I think I'm always not the most confident on like a day-to-day basis. I know like I rely on you and Steve and the other people on my team for like affirmation a lot of the time, but like deep in my soul, I am very confident and I have a lot of belief in my ultimate potential. And it's really like driven a lot of decisions and maybe some of the coaching changes I've made, or like even, going from running to triathlon. Nobody else would have thought that
and
was like a good move, but
well, obviously it was a good move, and also we know that you were in some coaching groups in the past that were a bit poisonous as well, that you got it out of and had to make the right decision. But yeah, I mean that one incident from the coach bringing you all into that room could have been, a life-defining, shaping moment for you as an athlete. Now, it's amazing. But like, so then obviously from there, then let's talk. So where did you go from there? So then from there, you're at the, you're a 13-year-old and you're racing these varsity kids and then you start beating them. So then obviously you made a decision like, screw you, I'm going to beat you anyway, sort of thing. I'm going to do what I want. So where did it go?
Yeah. So my dad has been like really supportive of my athletic career kind of from the beginning, and he was a runner. So he was like really excited that I was into running, and, he like really championed me as a young athlete. And breaking 5 minutes in the mile is a big deal when you're a high school girl, at least like pre-super shoes when I was of that age. Hashtag. I feel like I need a special asterisk next to all of my PRs that are like pre-super shoes, because they're not as impressive anymore, but they used to be like decent. But the next year I wanted to make it to the state meet on my own, and I wanted in the mile, and I wanted to break 5 minutes. And my dad said that he would buy me a pair of Oakley sunglasses if I broke 5 minutes in the mile.
I mean, you know me, I'd do anything for a pair of Oakley sunglasses.
I know you would. Dan is obsessed, but I don't wear Oakleys anymore, by the way. I have to plug Sun God. They're my sponsor. They're the most amazing company, and they're beautiful and eco-friendly.
If you didn't know you were getting a pair of Sun Dogs, you would have run under 4 minutes.
I would have run way faster if I was going to get Sun-Dogs, but I was promised sunglasses if I ran under 4 minutes, and I shot 5 minutes, under 5 minutes. If I ran under 4 minutes, we would not be here today. But I ran under 5 minutes. I think I ran 4:54.
Oh, wow.
So I smashed it. And then all of a sudden I'm getting like all these letters from colleges wanting to like recruit me. And
how old are you at this point? 14? 13?
I was probably 14 or 15 at this point.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah. I know, it's so fun. We were talking about this today, actually, with Matt Pendola, my strength coach. I never felt like pressure to get a scholarship to college. I was so academically motivated that I was always like, I need to be perfect in school so that I can get into a good college. And I did.
Yeah. I just need to interject to this. So a story from Chelsea is that her mum used to punish her when she was younger by hiding her school books so she couldn't study. That's how academically motivated Chelsea was.
We've come so far now. Now I'm just like sort of a dumb jock, but back in the day. So anyway, I get like all these letters, and I have actually kind of a little dip my junior year. The next year I'm not as good. I like make it to state, but I don't PR. And the next season I kind of like recommitted, and I have this big breakthrough. I run 4:47 at the end of the year, and I get fourth at the state meet, which is on the podium, and California is like the most competitive state in the US. So it was great, cool. And I had committed to go run at UC Berkeley the next year. And my first season at UC Berkeley, I have this great cross country season. I'm like the best girl on the team, and things are awesome. And, I'm going to like crush. But right after the cross country season, I got my first stress fracture in my shin. And this kind of turns into a 3 or 4 year injury cycle where I have like 6 or 7 stress fractures. I can't get healthy. I can't really get it together. I think I definitely had like a RED situation going on. I didn't know how to take care of myself. I also wasn't making great choices. Like I was a college kid and I wanted to party, and I was like walking around frat row in a boot, which isn't like, you know,
at a party.
a great choice.
Yeah.
But finally, my last season, I get healthy. I start training consistently. I'm taking care of my body. I actually, it was my 5th super senior year. You probably don't have that in the UK.
No, we don't.
But
everyone,
what you can do is you can do 5 years of university instead of 4 years if you redshirt one. So if you take a season off from competing, you can extend your collegiate eligibility. And so because I had missed many seasons, I had an extra year to compete. And what you could do is you could do grad school, or you could do another minor or another major, or you could take the minimum units to still like be a registered student.
And then
that's what I chose to do.
As you would, I'd choose the same. Yeah.
So, my last semester of school, I had 1 unit. I don't think I went, this is such bad advice for people. I moved in with my boyfriend, who's now my husband at the time. I didn't go to class. I actually still don't know if I passed this class or not.
That's fine. You know what? You know what? Honestly, I tell this story a lot because like I'm someone who's sat here now with a PhD, 70 publications, 3,000 citations. And I was the worst student at my undergraduate you could possibly.
Were you really?
Oh, I was really bad. Really
I didn't know that.
Like I remember my girlfriend at the time. It was like the final year, and I asked her a question about where to get a library book from or something crazy like this. She looked and she was like, "Are you serious? You've been here 2 years. Are you asking me this question now?" And then awesome. But it's all about application, isn't it? At the time, I was obsessed with triathlon, and I was at Loughborough University for triathlon, and I was like you, I was just focused on that. We
talk about this a lot. Pivot. Yeah, where you can like be good at 2 things, right? 2 or 3 things maybe. And at this time, I decided I was going to be really good at running, and I was going to I don't know what else I was going to be good at, but mostly just really good at running.
Yeah, exactly. It's fun. It's good.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah. So I'm All-American cross. I get 4 All-American honors this year. All-American in the NCAA is a big deal. It's means you're kind of on the pointy end of things.
Right. Yeah. Okay. I guess people in America will know how prestigious that is, but
yeah. So in cross country, it's the top 40.
Right. Okay. Top 40 in America.
Top 40 in the NCAA cross country race, which is the hardest. I think it's one of the hardest events because you have the distance runners and the middle distance runners all competing together from all the best teams.
It's like the World Cross Country Champs, right? World Cross Countries is probably the hardest, right? Because you get every single distance doing that race.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So I was All-American in that race, and then I ran 9 flat in the 3K in my first indoor track race, which was the 3rd fastest time in the country that year. I ran a pretty fast mile, and then I was 2nd team All-American the 5K, and I actually kind of finished on not a great note. I was 9th and All-American. First team was top 8, so I missed it by 1 spot, and I was I don't know what I'm going to do next. And I think it was just that belief and unfinished business where I thought, if I've only been healthy for 1 year and I've been able to do this, what could I do with a little more training and a little more coaching and consistency? So I reached out to my very dear friend and former coach, Nad Deboulay, who is an Olympian in the marathon. And I said, do you think that I should keep on doing this? And she said, you should definitely go for it, and I will coach you. And she was still competing professionally herself on the track and roads. And I followed her around like a puppy. I just did everything
And
that
you speak very
she
fondly of
did.
her, even now to this day. You mean, you
Yeah,
mention her all the time, so she's obviously had a big influence on your
she has.
athletic
She's a
career.
really, yeah, she's a really dear friend. She and her husband were in our wedding actually. And um, I don't, I don't like talk to her about, or I don't talk to her about like training advice a ton now. I talk to her more for like life advice when I have a really big decision to make. She's one of the first people I call. Um, and yeah, she's just been like a formative figure in my life. But she starts coaching me, and like 2 months later, I win the national title in the 10K on the roads. And I'd never run a 10K in my life. I had no idea what I was doing.
2 weeks.
2 months. It was like 2 months later.
Yeah, okay. 2 months.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
2 months.
Wow.
It was like 2 or 3 months later. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I was like, oh my god! And I made twelve and a half
What was
thousand
your timing
dollars.
for that race?
I think it was like 32:30 or 32:40, something like that. I didn't even know what a time meant in a 10K. I was
Yeah.
just like following the leaders, and then when like it was half a mile to go, I still felt okay. And I was like, I think I'll kick now. Um, and I made $12,500, and I was like, I'm loaded. I've made it, and I can pay my rent for like a while now. And I met Joan Benoit Samuelson there, which was so cool. And I thought, the world is my oyster. And then I won another national title a couple months later in the indoor 3K. And I had this like insane kick to beat a couple of Olympians. And, when you're winning like that, you just think, I'm just going to keep on doing this. And it's not that hard. You just win.
Yeah.
But that's not like how it played out for me after that. I had some kind of moments of brilliance, and then some really tough times with lots of injuries. I had like a small sponsorship deal. I wasn't making a lot of money, kind of scraping by, and I had a hard time finding like the right training environment for me. Magda had taken a job at GU. She's now the president there, but at that time she was taking I guess she was like a VP of R&D or something like that. And so we weren't training together 24/7. And
Was she still coaching you though? Like online?
She's still coached me for maybe another year. And I give her so much credit because she was going through this major life transition, and I was high maintenance. Like, she was still coming to workouts a few times a week, and like communication was really high. And I think I was like pretty demanding, because I was trying to like make a world team and run under 15 minutes for the 5 and do these big things, right? Like, I think you don't necessarily, we talk about like a high performance environment, and the high performance environment doesn't have to look fancy, but you need to have like certain things in place. And I was always having a hard time like putting those pieces together. Like, I had this brilliant coach, but I didn't have training partners. And then I like moved to, I tried a couple of different groups, and like I had training partners, but the coaching fit wasn't right. And I think it's hard to make it.
I don't know many people who can get that right. And I think especially the training partner and coach situation is always very, very difficult. Right?
Yeah.
I think finding good training partners for pros is especially difficult, because there's just a high level of ego involved on both sides normally, and it's very competitive, and at the end of the day you do have to race each other, and even if you look at, there's a lot of people who are trained, a lot of pros who have been training partners in the past, and they don't last. I don't know one who's had a long lasting relationship, and I think it's just eventually it just runs a bit sour, so you just have to run through them, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about this too right now. Like, I think that we have so many great pieces in play now, and not to like gush too much about you, but our like coach, or your coaching for me has been like such an amazing fit, and I feel really lucky. Like, it's been the most successful like setup that I've had in my career. But there's always things like to try to work out, right? Like, I would love to be with you in New Zealand 24/7, but that's not really realistic for my family life. So it's always a balance of finding the right fit, especially when you're like you have a kid and family and all these other things where you can't just be an athlete all the time.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, but I think, you just gotta. I do also feel that, like I've talked about before, I feel that having the in and out experience has its benefits as well. Like, letting you get on with your own life and do your own thing and have a bit more autonomy in what you're doing is important to then come in and have concentrated periods. Because when we get concentrated together, I do feel that's when we get the most done. And I think that, like, it will, and it may have even been happening a little bit towards the end of your stay in New Zealand, that maybe it was becoming a little bit stagnant, because we've done it for so long. And then, now we have a break, and then when we come back together again, it'll be like, it's a fresh, and then it's all new. And then, we'll get that kind of, the new fancy toy kind of thing situation going on where it's good again. So,
it was just a little bit. Just gets a little bit too much. It's more for probably our spouses, right? Like, they just need to not like talk about triathlon for a couple months.
Yeah. Really? Yeah. Well, Steve loves it. I don't know about that. I don't know. Steve, to be fair, Steve talks about triathlon more than anyone. So,
you know what I had the other day, we were, I don't know, like Valencia is going on and South Africa was going on, and he was trying to give me the updates. We were on the way home we were in the airport in LAX. I had to tell him, I was like, Steve, please don't take this personally. I just can't. Like, you can text Dan.
I know. Well, I think I was texting him actually about it. I think I can't remember about it. But I mean, just to finish up on the let's just to finish up on the running thing. I mean, obviously, highly successful running career. Let's rattle off a few of your PBs. So 9 minutes for the 3K. Just
8:47.
8:47. That's not just a bit under. That's a lot under.
Yeah.
To be fair, that's quite 8:47 for the 3K. 5K.
15:10.
15:10. And then your 10K.
32:05.
Yeah.
I think we should go after that.
Yeah, for sure. Or a half marathon.
Yeah, that'd be fun. And don't forget, my humble brag, I do have a 1,500 meter PR of 4:08.77.
4:08, yeah, wow. Yeah. So you got a bit of speed. That's why I think in a kick you'll be hard to beat. And I would love to see that one day. One day it'll happen. For sure.
One day.
But anyway, so I mean, I think it's incredible that your running career, and I always get, I think running such a, you have to be a very good athlete to be a good runner. Because it's just everybody runs and everybody realizes quite quickly if they're a good runner or not. And generally, if they're a good runner, they stay at it. So I think that's always something to be said. That it's pretty cool. But then, okay, so then obviously we transition, right? So transition into triathlon. I think we know the story. You're watching Gwen Jorgensen in the Olympics. Steve said you should do that. You told him to stop being so ridiculous, and you give it a go. You do a bit of Olympic distance for a couple of years, but then you find your passion is in the longer distance, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what was when you talk about the passion, I mean, did you just feel like that was always your calling, or did you feel like Olympic distance wasn't for you? What was the decision in going from the Olympic distance over into kind of the longer distance? Was it more of a lifestyle choice, or was it more of my skills are more suited to this choice?
It was more of a lifestyle choice and like a happiness choice at the time. I was in a ITU squad, and it was not a very fun environment for me. It was pretty, it was like a full-time performance environment. And I was like living and training with my competitors and like going from training camp to training camp. And it wasn't like super healthy, at least for me, and not very much fun. And I was like 27 or 28 at this point, living away from my husband, like not knowing what race I was going to get into next. And I actually feel like I could have been pretty good at it. I won a World Cup like early on in that adventure. But I finished the World Cup. I've talked about this lots of times. I finished the World Cup. I'm by myself. Like my family and friends aren't there. Yeah. And when you have a big moment, you want to celebrate with your people.
Exactly. And, I mean, That's what it's about, right? It's about I mean, that's why you do it, really, is to do it
Yeah.
with other people, right? So, I mean, I know this story's being told a load, so I think, you know, like, and we don't want to hang too on it, but basically, you then made the decision. It was kind of more of a lifestyle choice. You made the decision. You went into the long distance, and you started off training with Matt Dixon. I love Matt; he's awesome. You had some great successes under Matt, but then obviously you wanted a bit of a coaching change. So then obviously you went and did your due diligence, and you talked to my good friend Will Clark.
Hey, Will.
Hey Will, how you going? Who still to this day claims that you were his first choice, apparently. So
we know he was my first choice. Okay, yeah. You know, I have to give so much credit to Will because I called him. I wanted to like feel out like his coaching because he had started to get into like working with athletes, and I also just wanted to ask his advice as a friend because I trained with him a fair amount in Lanzarote with the team I had joined.
Terrible training partner.
No, he was a great training partner because he wasn't lazy, but I think that he just didn't feel the need to overdo it. And that meant
lots of fun to train with, but he enjoys a good ride.
He would just he would do my swims with me. And I don't know, he probably didn't come out of this block that well because he was doing my swims, but I came out of it swimming really well. Yeah. And
he'd be a really good swim training partner for you, especially in the pool. I mean, Will was someone who was amazing at swimming open water. But I mean, me and him, we used to when we were at Loughborough together, it was always quite funny because we were always like at the back of the lane, getting told off by the coach for going so slow. The only difference was when we came to racing, Will actually did well, and I didn't.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Olympian. What has he gone in the Ironman? Like 740 or something. Anyway, I was telling Will like what I was looking for in a coach, which was a very data-driven method. And he said, I'd love to coach you, but you really need to talk to Dan, please. And I hadn't heard of you at the time.
Offensive.
I'm sorry. I just think we should lay everything on the table. I hadn't heard of you. And I reached out, and I think we hit it off really well right away. And I think that, I don't know, from my perspective, we were both very excited about the project. And then I left you hanging for a month. Was it a month? Something like that?
It was a bit of a while. And I can't remember if I reached out to you or you reached out to me. In the end, I was like, what's going on? You know?
Yeah, I think you reached out to me.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Yeah, and I called you and I said, hey, I think you're awesome and I'd really love to work with you. It'd be a great fit. But psych, I'm 6 weeks pregnant, and if you don't want to take that on, I totally get it. And I've talked about this so many times, but it was just the coolest moment, like another kind of like career defining moment where you said, that's the best news. How can I support you? And like coming from a coach, and especially a male coach, that was huge for me.
I think though at the time, I mean, was Jake born by that? Was Jake?
I think he was like,
born, yeah. You know, yeah. And I think I wonder. Like, I often think about this, and for me at the time, it was an instinct reaction, right? It wasn't like, you know, it was just totally instinct reaction. But I wonder if that had happened pre-Bella and Jake, if my reaction would have been different, you know, because I didn't have the experience of being a dad and stuff like that. I wonder if that's the case, but
I think it's such a good lesson for all coaches, though, because I have, you know, several moments in my career where a coach has said something to me and it has really impacted me in a big way, like negatively and positively. And I think when you're in that position, you don't realize how much your words impact your athlete.
I think that's really, really important. Well, I mean, and then, obviously the rest is history. We started working together. Everyone knows that you we ended up surprisingly winning Kona in 2022. You know, we've had some pretty good results in a few PTOs, a couple of bronzes. But obviously we're still trying to improve and find our way. And I think what's been really cool since we've started working together, you know, back in the day, is that the team's just got so much stronger and so much more fun. So maybe we can just talk a little bit about who's in the team now, and what they do and what their parts are. So I guess we could start off with the big man himself, Uncle Rico, as I like to call him.
Is that what you call Steve?
Yeah, Uncle Rico.
Yeah, I mean, I think Steve has always been like my number one guy. We really started this triathlon project together back in 2017, I guess it was. And I've always felt like it was ours because like it's not something that I started when I was a kid and then he, we got together and he tagged along, but like he has really been a champion of this whole thing.
Totally. He is so invested in hanging out with him.
Yeah.
He is properly obsessed with, for someone who's never done the sport, he is exceptionally obsessed with the sport, which is,
well, I'd like to think that he's just, I'd like to think that he's mostly just obsessed with me and I happen to be into triathlon.
Yeah, I would say that's probably more actually. Yeah.
But no, so Steve is a firefighter, and in the middle of last season when I was really on the struggle bus, he quit his job to like be with me and Sky full time because I'm on training camp a lot and traveling a lot and my schedule is kind of nutty, and it just made sense for us like all to be together all the time. Yeah. And that has been a game changer, and I really don't even feel like we have been able to show like in my performances how much of a game changer that has been.
I would disagree because like
really
for people that don't know, your performance in Ironman New Zealand was ridiculous. But people don't understand that because they don't know the course and they don't know that day. Like it was like you got a 5-minute penalty. You had a headwind all the way back from Aparoa, which is the slowest it could possibly be. The lake was like the sea. It was so choppy, and it was windy on the run as well. And you still broke the course record. It's crazy. Like, so to put it into perspective, in 2018, when I went 8:24 in Kona, I did that same course, pristine day, and I went 8:35. You would have gone 8:35 without the 5-minute time penalty on a day that was so much slower. On that same day, Lorenzo broke 8 hours for the first time. Wow. So I think that puts it into perspective. So I'm biased. I know I sit here with a very biased hat on, and obviously I'm your biggest fan. But that's just a glimpse of it. And, people don't realize it because they don't understand that race. But for someone who's in the know, it is. So you should.
Yeah, I think that we're just like all of us. We're just Kona. Like we trained for it and we prepared for it, and I don't think you can get lucky at that race. You have to be the best on the day to win it. But I didn't know that what's going to happen. Like I didn't know that I was preparing to win. I was preparing to have a good day. And now, like having done that, I think that we're all preparing for another big day like that, whether it's at, a PTO event or at Nice or Kona again. And that's when I think I'll really feel like this big decision to have him like be part of this full time as like, cause it's really his career. I think that some people may look at it as he's just like just being a stay-at-home parent is the hardest job in the world. But I think people think, people think that he's with Sky and he's a stay-at-home parent. And the reality is that, yes, he is a stay-at-home parent, but he is also 100% a part of my team and he manages a lot for me. He works a lot on the business side of things. And then he's also in really close communication with you and Matt and David and kind of oversees some of my training when I'm not with you. So, that's been like really massive for me and I think has made things a lot more fun and it's made it feel like way more sustainable.
And I always think like if you look at all the successful triathletes in the world, there is always a significant other, who's the biggest supporter. I think of Gianfredino and Emma Snowsall, right? Emma Snowsall practically gave up her career I don't know them personally, but that's the way it appears to me. There's lots of examples of that. There's always one significant other in a match, in that type of high performance relationship. So, good on him. Good on Steve. He's the man. And then obviously we had the new addition. Matt's been, is it a year? He must have been about a year now. Nearly coming up to a year.
Yeah. So I started working with Matt.
The Pendola project.
Yeah. I started working with Matt Pendola, gosh, right when I got back from Europe last summer, right after Roth, I had, like a tough couple races and I got E. coli. So I was really sick. And I think because of that parasite, I was having a hard time, like keeping on weight and muscle, and was introduced to Matt, and he's been such a game changer for me, like overall, with my strength and health, and I think consistency in training. And, I'm not like always 100%. I have little niggles here and there, but, I think, it's been a great addition to the team and my training.
Yeah, the thing about Matt is he has this kind of amazing eye for seeing things, and he can give you one small thing to think about, or he gives you these like 3 exercises, watches you run, gives you 3 exercises, and then suddenly you actually look different running in the blink of an eye. It's
he really is kind of a guru in that way. He'll see like your arm is like, with me, sometimes he'll see that one of my arms is swinging wide, and from that he'll be able to tell that my glute isn't firing and something funky is going on with my lower leg, and he'll give me, we call it protocol. He'll give me some protocol and exercises to do, and all of a sudden, I'm like bouncing off the ground and running along smoothly. It's pretty cool.
I think he's got a natural gift for that, because there's no way me personally, I can't see that sort of stuff. I think, we've also got someone who has a good eye for seeing things is Paul Newsom. So my old good friend from Swim Smooth, who obviously comes in and helps with the swimming technique every so often, and he's been a big game changer as well. He was here in New Zealand, and not recently, he was out in Kona as well. And obviously, and I think he made that massive impact in your swimming just before Kona when you won in 2022. And then the big addition this year has been Dr. David Spindler. And we had the pleasure of David coming out here to New Zealand, and I really enjoyed meeting him. He was such a good guy. He was awesome. So do you want to talk a little bit about what David's background and what he's brought to the team from your perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. I was introduced to David through my managers, Adam Ackworth and Holly Hale from Santara Group, who I have to give a shout out to, because they're also a big part of my team. But Adam reached out to me and said, I think you should talk to this guy, David Spindler. Have you seen the Cavendish documentary? And I was like, no, I have not. And so I go and I watch but I will. So I go watch the Cav documentary, and there's a big portion of it where they're interviewing this guy named David Spindler. And he's a neuroscientist, works as kind of a mental coach for athletes. And I called Adam and I said, can you set up the meeting? And I have a call with David, and I get off an hour later, and I'm like buzzing. I'm like, this guy's going to be a game changer for me. I think, it's kind of like how I felt when I was talking to you, where I'm like, I have to work with this guy. And it really annoys Steve, because once I get my mindset on something, like, it's a done deal.
I think we all had that experience with David, because I'm sorry if you're listening to this back, David, but I have to say I took that call a little bit pessimistic about it, to be honest. I wasn't sure, and I was like, really, do we need another person in this team? And then I got off the call and I was like, yeah, this guy's awesome. We got to have he's the man. And then meeting him in person when he came over here it only brought up those feelings as well, right? It was awesome having him here, and he's such a great person to meet in person as well. I love that week. That was such a good week, and we got so much stuff done, and we had all these ideas of making Chelsea do these really hard sessions where we thought she was going to really crush mentally, and unfortunately she just did every single one perfectly.
But instead I crushed the sessions.
Exactly.
David. So David is a neuroscientist by training, and I would say that, what he does with me is multifaceted. He works a lot on kind of my daily habits and methods to improve brain chemistry, basically.
That's the thing. He's a neuroscientist, right? And that's why I found him so fascinating, is that, and obviously my background in HRV, there's a big link between all that kind of stuff. And he's very evidence based, and man, I could talk. When he came here, I just loved chatting to him. So So good.
Yeah.
But I mean, I feel so privileged to be part of your team and have such a great team. And it's, I think it's pretty awesome.
Aww.
Yeah, it's good. But I like the way it's just grown, And this is the benefit of Kona, right? Is that we had winning Kona gave us so much more opportunity to get better, and that's what.
Yeah, I think. I think like I feel so privileged in that way, right? Kona was, gosh, it was like the best time ever, and to achieve at that level at the pinnacle of your sport is the most incredible thing. But I've always said, like, I just want the opportunity to keep on doing this for as long as I can so I can find out how good I can be. And like that win gave me so many more resources to do that. And I feel like so built up as an athlete. And of course, like, as we learned a couple weeks ago, I'm not always going to get it right. But I think that with, the team surrounding me, like when I do get it right, I really get it right. And that's like such a fulfilling way, to pursue your craft.
Exactly. No, it's awesome. No, good. So I am a little bit conscious of time, and we've been talking 55 minutes, but I want to kind of get one bit of a wrap up going. But I do have one question that I was really thinking about when I was, what do you want to talk about Chelsea about? I feel you've done a lot of podcasts. You kind of, lots of them are all on the mental health things and the equal women's sports and rights. And I didn't want to.
Wow.
I love that. But we don't need to keep on talking about it. So, but one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about, because I feel there's been two pivotal in the time I've known you. There's been two pivotal points in your life, and probably the expectation versus the reality has been quite different. So one would be giving birth to Sky. Like what you felt it was going to be like before versus what it was actually like coming back from pregnancy and bringing yourself back to basically the best in the world in elite competition. And also the second would be what you're, winning Kona and what you thought that would mean and what the reality of that actually was. And then, because I think, they're probably quite different, right? Was that be correct? And then is there anything now that you would, if you could be yourself now, seeing your past self before being pregnant or your past self before winning Kona, what would you tell yourself? Is there anything that you would tell yourself to do differently? Anything you would, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do know what you mean. Well, I guess I'll start with, the pregnancy and comeback reality versus expectations. There's this really awesome video of me. I'm massive. I'm like 9.5 months pregnant. Psych. They tell you that pregnancy is 9 months. It's actually 10 months. So I'm 9.5 months pregnant, waddling around, taking my dog for a walk, and it goes, so here's how it's going to go. I'm going to pop out the baby on my due date, and I'm going to take a couple weeks off, and then I'm going to get back to training, and then I'm going to qualify for this big race in 4 months. And it's just like rolls off my tongue. Like it's no big thing. And I think that comes from the athlete, the lifelong athlete who thinks when I put my mind to something, I will achieve it. And it turns out that that's not how pregnancy or postpartum goes. You actually don't have 100% control over how your birth is going to go and how your return to activity is going to go. And also, there's this little new human, and you don't have control of how they're going to sleep or how they're going to eat. And I had this like pretty big wake up call a couple weeks into Sky's life when, I was feeding her on, you feed them on a 2-hour cycle, on an 2-hour interval. And it was taking us 1 hour and 45 minutes to feed her. And then you have 15 minutes off, and then you start the cycle again. Yeah. And I just thought, like, how am I ever gonna do this? Do anything. Yeah. And I remember, and I had been very clear with my goals, right? Yeah. And I don't know if that was a good thing or a bad thing. I think at the time, like that's what made sense for me, both professionally and financially, that I needed to get back to racing. But I was very clear with you on my goals of wanting to qualify for the Collins Cup. And that meant doing a validation race when I was 4 months postpartum. And
because I had to call you and I was like, I almost felt bad doing it at the time. I remember
Yeah.
the feeling. I was like, Chelsea, if you want to do this, you're going to have to start doing some training as of Monday, because it was getting
right. And I think at that time, I was like 5 weeks postpartum, something like that. And I didn't feel like, it's so interesting upon reflection. I don't think I felt pressure from anybody else. I think I just felt like this is something that I wanted to do and something that I said I could do. And I think that this applies to so many women and not just athletes, is you want to believe that like you're still in control and you can still do the things that you did before you had a baby, and you can still live your life in the way you did before you had a baby. And, it's like a harsh reality to learn that that's not actually.
I can totally reflect as well, because even before we had Bella, and we were one of those people who was like, oh yeah, well, we're going to make the baby revolve around us. But, they'll sleep, they'll come with us, they'll sleep when they want to sleep, and we'll just make it work. And it's like, yeah, right. Like, that is not how it happened. Yeah. We were completely dominated by Bella and what she wanted to do. So is there anything now you would tell yourself differently? Like,
I mean, this is so funny, but like I am such a champion for female athletes choosing motherhood during their careers. But sometimes when I see people talk about it, it's like they talk about it that it's a given, that they'll just come back like they were before. And the reality is that you're not going to be what you were before. And sure, you might be better, but like the amount, the commitment that you have to have, and more than anything, the support that you have to have around you is so massive when you have another human. And like, there's no way that I could have done this or could continue to do this if it weren't for Steve and for my parents. Like, that has been like, everybody has had to go all in on my goals. And so I think for anyone like choosing parenthood while they're racing or pursuing a career in professional sport, I just would like encourage you to find a strong support system.
Yeah. So I guess the two things would be like, make sure you have the support system, and also I guess like, because I read a book, it's like called Stumbling Upon Happiness, and the big thing in that book is about expectations versus reality, and like, you expect the worst, and then everything's always going to be good. And I think having, would you kind of tell yourself, hey, this isn't going to be easy, you need to get ready for a rough ride here. But sometimes I think naivety is a good thing, right? As well, so
I know it's such an interesting question, because I don't think that I want to like have another baby while I'm still competing. And so much of that is because I know what it looks like now.
Yeah.
And that's not to say I wouldn't encourage other women to do it, but like, it's still, it's really hard. And like the support from, the industry, it's not a given. And it's better, I think, than it was even when I had Sky, but like, that's not a given. And, it's just like, it's so unique for each woman. Pregnancy is so unique, and like giving birth and postpartum, you don't know how it's going to go. And I know some women who have had like a pretty smooth ride in some ways physically, but the mental health has been a big challenge. Whereas other people have had like, a pretty, seamless transition physically, like mentally, right? But had major trauma during birth. And it's such a rewarding pursuit. And like, I wouldn't change anything, as far as like choosing to have a family. But yeah, I think the reality is that I would, I think the naivete was to my benefit at the time.
Yeah. I think that's sometimes the benefit. I also think that's the first thing, like, it's similar to something, not that it's similar, but like people doing an Ironman, it's like when you haven't done one the first time, you don't know what to expect. And often people have the best race the first time. And then it's like, oh my God.
I think it's good to have maybe like a healthy amount of fear.
Yeah.
With maybe childbirth and also Ironman.
Yeah. And then also like, what about Kona, pre-Kona versus post-Kona? Because obviously there was some difficulties post-Kona, and you went on Rich Roll and you talked a lot about that. And obviously it's not what you would expect from someone winning Kona, right? You think it's going to be the highlight of your career as an athlete, right? So, yeah. Talk a bit about that.
I think, like even this year, right? You start winning and you think, I'm just going to keep on winning. And I thought, like, I win this big race, everything's going to be good now. Like, I'm, like financially way less stressed out than I was before. I have a lot more like freedom in that way. And I know how to win. So I'm going to keep on winning. And like, that just wasn't how things worked out for me, right? I think I had a lot of lessons to learn still. And I've been doing this,
as well,
I've been doing the sport. Yeah. I've been doing the sport, right? Like,
yeah, for sure.
At that time, I had been doing the sport for 4 or 5 years, and it was my second Ironman. And even now, right, at Ironman New Zealand, that was my 4th Ironman. Many of these women who I compete against have been doing triathlon since they were 10. Taylor Knibb has been doing triathlon much longer than I've been doing triathlon, just as an example.
Yeah.
And so I just don't have like the bank of experience that a lot of my competitors do. And I think I've been on a pretty fast track, and I think I still am. But yeah, it hasn't been like a smooth road in a lot of ways. Sometimes, I think like Steve is such a pillar of like strength for me. And he always says, like, when I'm going through the hard times, he says like things work out for us. And like, maybe that sounds sort of trite and, I don't know, privileged, and it definitely is. But like, he and I have been through a lot of hard times in sport, especially, and have had some really big lows. I mean, like when I started triathlon, like we were really scraping by, like things were dicey. And it was just, I don't know, this like journey and belief that we've had in each other and me as an athlete, where like things turn out okay. Like things will turn out okay. And so I think even with like the failure last year or the disappointments last year, it's always been like, it's going to be okay. And like things are going to come around because we're really good at what we do. And it just makes me think of like all the hard times leading into Kona, right? Like those provided me the opportunity to have
some hard times before, yeah.
And there were some hard times, right? But like without those hard times, like Kona doesn't happen. You learn so much in those hard times. And so I think, last year and, coming off of Singapore or whatever, like I feel like it sucks so much in the moment, and it's embarrassing and it's hard and it makes you question things, but like that's what leads to the really good stuff and makes like the top of the mountain feel so awesome.
Yeah. I mean, is that saying like the sweet never tastes so sweet without the bitter before,
Yeah. I mean, and like I'm American. I like subscribe to the American dream. I'm all about it. And yeah, maybe it comes across as like,
so is there anything you would tell yourself
naive sometimes
pre-Chelsea in Kona to you?
I think, if anything, I wish that I had just like taken a little more time to enjoy it.
Yeah.
Because, I like just,
it's always all about that. And I think it's so true. Yeah. I think like we, particularly as athletes, it's like the next thing, what's next? The next thing's gone to the next thing, and it's almost like you have to think there isn't a next thing for a while, I think.
Yeah.
And then enjoy it, especially for something so big.
Yeah, totally. I think for me, when I am able to really like block out the noise and focus on my training and my family, I do really well. It's when like all the other stress creeps up on me that things can go sideways. And
I think many don't realize the additional stresses. People will think, oh, well, having someone who works with a lot of pros and having a lot of amateurs, the perception of pros is all they have to think about is training and recovery. And that is not true at all. Like, especially for yourself, obviously, you're different as well. You're a mother, but there's also a lot of other things going on with the sponsorships, and there's a lot of other commitments that is there, and you need someone managing that, and that's what Steve's doing half the time. But it still infiltrates into your your psyche and what you're doing every day, right? Because at the end of the day, Steve's not the one who can turn up to the photo shoot or, you know, do the sponsorship commitments. And there's a lot, you know. So
yeah. Yeah, but I think you know, something that I have worked on with David is, you know, it goes back to our mantra of like, make the most important thing the most important thing. And for me, that has been focusing on the opinions of the people who really matter, like in my performance bubble, which is you and David and Steve and Matt, right? It's like keeping it simple in that way goes a long way.
Yeah, exactly. No, really, really good. And some great insights for everyone who's listening to that can learn a lot from, for sure. Okay, we're running close in time, so I really want to close this up. But just to close up, I'm sure there'll be lots of that people want to listen back on this. There's so many gems in this podcast. I think it's been a great first one, even if I say so myself.
Humble brag.
Humble brag about this first podcast. But this is the Pillar Performance Podcast, and you yourself are a pillar athlete. Tell me about what's your favorite micronutrient that you use with Pillar?
Oh man, well, I love Pillar. I started using Pillar in the middle of last season when I was kind of digging myself out from this health, you know, crisis that I was having. And I started with the triple mag, and it's been awesome for my sleep and just general recovery. I wasn't taking any magnesium before. And my HRV, yeah, I wasn't taking any magnesium supplement before I started on the triple mag, and that's been an awesome addition. And then the ultra omegas are amazing. Yeah.
Love the ultra.
They're so good. We love them.
Yeah, we're hopefully going to have some ultra omega experts coming on the podcast as well in the near future. So pretty excited about that. But I mean, with one thing with the triple mag with you especially is that I find it's the most effective after your high intensity days. Like it seems to make the bigger difference is that with your sleep after the high intensity days when taking the triple mag compared to not HRV the next day, always much better, which kind of does make sense because like stress, like raising cortisol, raising adrenaline, which is all mediated by sympathetic activation from high intensity exercise. It actually really depletes your magnesium stores as well. So you really got to make sure you top those up. But triple magnesium is always the popular one, and it tastes so good as well, which is a good thing.
I know we actually have different opinions on preferred flavor, but I really like the more tropical.
Yeah,
like
not
pineapple, coconut. It's like a healthy margarita to end your day.
All about the berry. Here's the top tip for anyone watching this back is that you can give triple magnesium to kids as well. My kids love it, and a real gem is that mix the triple mag with a plain Greek yogurt. Amazing. And my kids, it's like a special dessert. My kids love it. Yeah, give it a try.
Well, we are pretty wrecked with our jet lag back from New Zealand.
So brutal.
So we've been giving it to Sky.
Yeah. Well, magnesium when you're tired or you're sleep deprived, you get your magnesium gets depleted. So it's really good for jet lag too, which is why it's very effective for those times when you've had bad sleeps and you're coming across the world. So anyway. Awesome. I can't thank you enough for this, Chelsea, for taking the time to be on here. This is going to be what's going to jet set the Pillar Performance Podcast into we're going to be the next big podcast. I can feel it. Until next time, thanks so much.